Yeah, cool.
Okay. Okay, so here we're looking at the size comparison between the D20 on the left and the D400 with the D20 emulator and the HDLC converter on the right. As you can see, they're both the same physical size. So in a retrofit installation, we would remove the D20 chassis and we would fit the D400 and the HDLC converter into the same spot. And then if we look at the back, we can see the connections. So on the back we have all the serial ports for the D400, the Ethernet ports, and on the back of the HDLC converter we have two D.20 links and an Ethernet connection. So as far as physical connection goes, we hook up power, we replace the serial ports onto the first 7 serial ports on the D400. We move the HDLC cables from the D20 to the 2 HDLC ports on the converter, and then we connect the converter to the D400 using an Ethernet cable between this port here and one of the Ethernet ports on the D400. And that is it as far as physical installation goes. It's that simple. Okay, now we're going to take a look at how you transfer the information out of the D20 into a D400. So that will include the firmware, the boot ROM, and the configuration. So for this setup, what we have is we have a Westmain cable plugged from our PC serial port to the D20, and we have the PC also connected using an Ethernet cable to the D400. And we start up the D20 emulator configuration tool, and we simply go to the project file and we select transfer D20 to D400. And then what we can do is we can save, we can type in the name of a file just to save our configuration. Save, and we get a configuration wizard that guides us through the process. So what we do on the D400 settings is put in the IP address of the D400, the D400 telnet password, and we punch in the MAC address of the Ethernet HDLC converter, and that MAC address is on a label on the back of each module that ships, so you just copy it down off of that. Then over on the D20 side, we have the D20 username and login, in this case Westronic RD, and then we just hit OK. This brings us to a screen that we can just accept the defaults for, but this is the COM port mapping, so this just shows us that Westmain will be on port 1 on the D400, and then COM 1 to 7 will be on ports 2 to 8. And so if we care to change these, we can. Normally you could just leave these at the default, so I'm just going to leave them. Then there are a couple of quick settings on the D400 side, which we will probably be hiding in the future, but they just have to do with whether you want the database sync enabled between the D20 and the D400 databases, and then a few timing parameters. Now you just select your D20 board type and whether you want to time sync. This time sync parameter specifies whether or not the D20 emulator or the D400 software controls the time of the unit. And this is just because you may have DNP protocol, or you may have protocols running on the D20 that are sending it time syncs, but you may prefer to have the D400 time syncing to a network clock or to a protocol on that. So this just allows you to select which side has say over or control over the system clock. So we just hit OK to that, and it asks us if we want to upload the boot ROM firmware and configuration from the D20. We just hit yes, and we'll see the status window comes up, and it is currently trying to connect to Westmain on the D20. It'll ask us what baud rate we'd like to use. In our case, we're going to use 115.2. It's okay, so this goes into Westmain and increases the baud rate there to 115.2. and then we start uploading the files. So this process at 115.2 depends on your memory model, can take a little bit of time because it's over a serial port. In this case it'll take us roughly half an hour, so we'll take a look at what happens half hour from now. Okay, so now we've finished the upload of the files from the D20. So now just to download it, we select Project, Download to D400. It just asks us if we're sure. So we click yes, and we'll see there we go, we see the file being downloaded. In the meantime, what we've done is opened up a terminal window here that's connected using a serial port to Westmate on the D400. And so when we get all the files in, we should see the D20 emulator restart and see the familiar startup messages. So there we see the D20 starting. Go to that window, we can log in. And what we have is exactly what was inside the D20 when we started, except now it is running inside the D400. And the points are available to the D400 database and everything already. So that's how simple it is to transfer your files from one to the other. While we're looking at it, let's just take a look real quickly at another way that we can do this. If supposing that we already have our firmware and boot ROM files, we can also upload, rather than transferring everything, we can choose an upload from the D20 where we just select only the configuration file or any combination, and if we hit OK, then it will upload from the D20, but rather than uploading all of the files, it will only upload the selected files. So this is a great way to get a configuration out of a machine that you're not quite sure what is in there. You can still pull it out and push it across. The emulator doesn't care. If you know what it is, it will just run exactly whatever that configuration was. Okay. Okay, so we're looking at the D400 Substation Data Manager HMI to see what the D20 points look like inside. So if we go to the point detail screen, we'll see that there are 4 IEDs, 4 entries into the IED tab, all coming from the D20 enabler. Each one of these represents one application in our firmware. In our case, we have D.20, we have 2 DNP instances, and we have a calculator DTA as well, which all own points. So if we look into the details on the D.20 link, we'll see that we have a group of status points and a group of output points. In this case, we have 1 C board and 3 S boards connected. We can operate and see the values right all at once. So just to take a look at the speed of update that we're getting, we're going to take a digital output point and we're going to send it some controls. I'm going to watch how the digital input point updates as this goes. So I'm going to set this to a pulse train for 100 milliseconds on, 100 milliseconds off, and I want about 100 operations. Should be good. So we'll execute that, and then if we go to the digital input screen, you can see the digital input updating in real time as controls go, as long as the SOE times and the state descriptions updating. And when the control stops operating, you'll see how long it takes between that and the last one to come in. So there it stopped, and if you could hear the clicking on the relay, you see that it stopped almost immediately. So that just shows the real-time update capability of the enabler connected right in through the D400 HMI. We can also look at all of the other data points. The point descriptions, if we go back and take a look, I'm going to open up the calculator DTA. In calculator, we go to the point details. We had set up some point descriptions for 3 of the points. The names were called calculator DTA number 1, number 2, number 3. And so these are the point descriptions that were configured in Config Pro for calculator DTA. And you can see that the point descriptions have been automatically pulled across to the D400 and brought in here as well. So as long as the point descriptions are in your configuration, you can bring them over to the D400 HMI as well. Okay, that's good. Okay, we're just going to show a little comparison of the Westmain speed updates compared to from serial versus Ethernet. So on the left, we have this PC connected to a serial port, so basically connected to the equivalent of the Westmain port. They're both connected into the D400. This PC is connected using a serial port the traditional way you would connect to a D400. The one on the right is connected through the D400 HMI into the Westmain link that way via Ethernet. And we're just going to do a little going around through some of the menus, and you can see the marked difference in update speed to the user. So if I go into system data for an example and go into the digital input displays, you can see that we're waiting for the one on the left to catch up to the version on the right. And if we page down, we get updates immediately here, whereas we're watching. And so you'll see all through the Westmain interface that the user responsiveness from the emulator version of Westmain is a lot faster with the version that's coming through Ethernet than the version that's connected up through a serial port. So this is just a nicer, faster way to look at the old D20 interface that people are used to. Okay, so what we're going to do is a little demonstration of how quickly the updates come in to Westmain running on the D20 enabler. So what we have here is a C board and 3 S boards all connected in through the D.20 link. And we have all of the status points, all 64 points on each of the 3 status boards, all wired into one control switch here. So first we'll take a look at the SOE buffer. And you can see that the SOE buffer is empty. So we'll just go back to the digital input display. And the first status board starts at point 17. I'm just going to click the switch on and you can see how quickly the points all update. So here we go, 3, 2, 1. And we see all of the updates. And then we'll switch them back off again, 3, 2, 1. And they're off. So that's how quick it updates. If we go back to the SOE log, take another look, we'll see if we just run right to the end, we've got our all 380, oh what is it, 384 points on off, and we have 3 calculator points that are triggered off of one status point on each board, which is what the extra points are. So as you can see, it's very responsive, very quick updates for status inputs coming in from the D.20 link.